So I work at a company called Agilent Technologies, and this is going to be a little bit different perspective in that we're doing research work, scientific research at Agilent, along with other capabilities. Certainly, we have an IT organization, but everything I'm going to talk about today is around resource management in research, which is again a little bit different perspective, perhaps, than some of the presentations today. And just a quick update. So Agilent is a supplier of electronic equipment for laboratories. So this is instruments that do analysis in many different markets, including analytical instruments, test equipment, software, everything for the laboratory that's doing tests. We're a global company, and we're actually spun off from Hewlett-Packard about 20 years ago. And we're focused in a wide variety of markets, including pharmaceuticals and diagnostics. As an aside, we're heavily involved in working with our customers to find a vaccine for the coronavirus, and also in testing equipment, testing supplies to help find where it's located. Mentioned we're global, so that's a perspective I just wanted to share as well, because in everything that we're looking at people that are scattered worldwide in various laboratories, different organizations, different cultures, different languages. That's been important as we've been working through project and portfolio management solutions to ensure that we can get global support, we can get our people engaged with the project. We're mainly working with chemists in laboratories, so these are not IT specialists, so usability, ease of use is very important to us as we're a global company. So I'm going to jump in though and talk a little bit about our journey. Again, we thought the problem was project management. So we had projects that were stalled, had indefinite schedules, usually because of technical obstacles. We found that projects were running that really were not aligned with what we're trying to do today and what our roadmaps were. And we saw that a number of projects really didn't have the oversight we needed at a high level to see, how are they going, how are they funded, how are they resourced, when are they going to be done, are they going to align with our roadmaps? And really an issue, especially globally, through all these different groups, different locales, very little visibility to what's actually going on there. How are they staffed? What's our investment level? What are we expecting to get out of these projects? So it was project management in that we were having these multiple issues I mentioned, and at a detail level, do we have project plans for these projects? What are the risks? The typical PMO type of issues that you'd have in a global environment. Really didn't have visibility to that. A lot of that was because of organizational changes, the global situation that we had of people scattered worldwide in various labs and different organizations. So this last statement here of fragmented, inconsistent enterprise standards and processes, really what this leads to is we needed a better, more robust PMO established before we even started looking at what are the best tools to do this. We also needed processes to prioritize the projects, make decisions, what goes forward, what doesn't, how are we going to staff these, what are our priorities, and what are we going to do first and second. So our first solution, and this is 5 years ago, was an online project management system. This was Microsoft Project Online, and it allowed us to link directly to those people that were using project tools on their desktops. We initially had more than about 80 projects and about 100 different resources scattered worldwide. Mainly what we were doing there is getting information out through custom reports that were connected to the database. This got us, really some experience in what we needed to have in our organization to get to where we need to be as a functioning, robust PMO and have a system to support that. So we started developing a high-level plan of record that could be communicated out to these different groups, and then prioritizing the existing projects, looking at which projects needed to be canceled, which ones needed to move forward, and specifically how we would approve, initiate, govern those projects through their completion. We found that we had a wide variety of different standards, again, because of the various organizations, and we started putting together, here are the standards that we're going to use worldwide. And we tried to keep this very high level as possible. What's the information that we need to have? Where do we get that information? What standards can we provide around that? And the intent there was so that we could compare projects against project. If you have different standards, if you have different measures for each of the projects, even down to different ways of how you resource and finance, forecast those projects, it's difficult to compare one project versus another and decide which is first and which might be canceled. So the standards piece of it was a big part of it. So what did we learn from this? So I mentioned that we're doing a lot of work on instrumentation and R&D, and that's might be a little bit different. We had many projects that were stalled, not so much because the project couldn't execute itself, but because the technology to support the release really had not been proved out yet. So it's very difficult for us to predict the breakthroughs in technology. We put a lot of work into that, obviously, but when the light goes off, you don't know exactly when that's going to happen, how it's going to happen, or even the direction that happened. It's quite a bit different than, say, an IT project in terms of its predictability and ability to know when can we actually introduce a product from this technology. So we needed to separate out that technical work from the product development itself. In other words, if we're going to do a product development, we need to have proved out that technology before we have confidence in when we can actually deliver the product. We also found, and this is in italics here, we actually have a core competency in how to manage our projects. The scope schedule dependencies, that's a core competency of the company going way back. And we have good project management processes, people with a lot of experience in project management. That piece of it, I think, as we learned, we actually do a fairly good job of that piece of it. Also, though, that portfolio management was critical. In spite of all that, we did have projects out there that, as I mentioned, we weren't sure where they're going to complete, what's their return on the investment, how do we compare one project against another, especially if we're using different measures for the project. So part of the learning then was to set up our organization for success. And it's really a matrix organization where we have a group of project and program managers, we have resource management, and then this new idea in separating out the project execution from the technology development, a science and technology group. So that middle group here was an aha that, if we're going to be successful at this, we need to have a separate track in developing the core technology that's required to get these projects out. And we intentionally wanted to have this dynamic between the project managers who, have their triple constraint and they're responsible for delivery on time and on budget, from the actual resources, recruiting those resources, developing them, motivating them, making sure that they're engaged in the projects and getting feedback. So essentially, we've got 3 management groups under our umbrella of the projects and programs, the resource management, and then the scientists that are actually working on the technology. From the learnings of this, 2 years later, so this is in April of 2017 now, we took a look at Tempus Resource, because our finding was that what we really needed was better focus on the resource and resource management over the actual project execution. We, in our initial investigation with Tempus, we found compared to other solutions out there, it was a much more intuitive user interface. You didn't have to be an experienced Microsoft project person, for instance, to use this. If you had familiarity with a spreadsheet and with Excel, you could use the interface and you could get up to speed pretty quickly. Again, coming back to our organization, that was really important. We're a group of scientists, not project managers. We're not IT people. We're people that are focused in different areas. But obviously, we need a system that we could use to make sure we could execute on our projects. We found in our training that it was actually an easy rollout. We have multiple cultures and languages I mentioned before, and so to have a system that was easy to learn and use was extremely important to us. Also one that was stable. So we found, and by the way, we are on premise, so we're hosting our own. I don't have experience on Prosymmetry out in the cloud, but we've set it up inside and we found it's been extremely stable. It's fast, it's responsive. That was also important to us as with people that are accessing this from multiple countries, Australia, China, Europe certainly, and the US and South America, all over the world, that it needed to be stable, responsive, and we found that. Also, that as we found issues around it, that those could be updated, that we could securely back up the system. We've got a lot of data in there, a lot of information. It's our crown jewels. It's everything that we've invested in. We need to make sure we don't lose any of that information. We found that's been very easy to do, especially again for people that are non-IT people, that are mainly chemists and other scientists. I think earlier Lloyd was talking about the need to have reports for our organization. In other words, not everybody can log into Tempus in our group to get the information they're looking for. And typically what we will do is an extraction of the data out to Excel, and from that, making standard monthly reports, management reports, that sort of thing, that are distributed around. We found that that's actually been very easy to do, to get the data out. That's been a roadmap that we've been on with improvements. It's actually gotten easier and easier over time for us to do that in working with the people at Prosymmetry. So this last point on here for trending, graphics, reports, that was critical for us to be able to do that easily. Now, for our organization, what we wanted to make sure is that we maintain the ownership and accountability for each of the project managers, that they didn't get buried on all this and were, floundering around trying to understand, what do I own, what don't I own? So it's very clear organizationally what the ownership was for the project manager, and then the supporting owners in the resource management group to make sure that those projects were staffed with the right people. However, we wanted to make sure that they weren't overwhelmed with this. As you get into project management and even resource management, the world is wide open. You could come up with pages and pages and pages of things we might want to know about a project and the people. You can just get lost in that. So we really tried to keep this high level. What's the minimum data we need to have for what our portfolio view requires and for execution? And at every time that we'd come up, could we do this? We could do this. The answer is not could we, but should we? What's going to be the impact on the project managers, and for what benefit? So I'd urge you to take a look at that and keep to the minimum data set. Even when you do that, you'll find it's hard to keep to the simple things. Somebody is always asking for something new, and you just have to always question, what is the benefit of that given the effort, for instance, and the support that you're going to need. The middle point here, one source of truth. So previous to having Tempus set up, we had multiple sources of different information on the project scattered all over the organization in various SharePoints and share drives and spreadsheets, and much of it offline and not available. It was part of our strategy to have end-to-end data integrity, or one source of truth. If you want to know what the status of a project is, there's one place to go look for that. Frankly, if it's not in Tempus, it doesn't exist. And if we see something that's inconsistent with that, we're going to our touchstone of what does it say in Tempus. If that's not right, it needs to be fixed and corrected. That has helped us a lot to figure out, where do we go for the right answer. And lastly on this, looking at metrics then, we're measuring project velocity, we have dashboards, we're measuring results versus plan, and all this is coming off of the information that we now have in Tempus that we never had before around what projects are in flight, what is their status, where are they in the phase, what are our costs, what's our deployment of labor, how are they on schedule, what do they look like on financials. All that's now embedded in this one global system for us. It's made that question about who's right much easier to answer. So for the first time, we had an enterprise-wide view of everything that we're doing around the projects, and this is key, and the resources. In the prior system, we could see what was going on in the project, but it was much more difficult to understand how our resources were being deployed. And there was an assumption made that once we'd approve a project, that it instantly is resourced and is now moving forward. And come, the next quarter, and people go, well, how are you guys doing? Well, we don't have the resources yet to start on that, but it was approved 3 months ago. Now we have a much more easy and clear view of what the next steps are going to be. When do these people come off their projects? What are their skill sets? When will they be available? And we can now get a view of that across the organization. But the primary benefit of this system is not so much in planning and scheduling all these different projects and all the tasks. Certainly Microsoft Project and other tools are great for doing that, but really is in the resource management. Who's actually doing this? Are they available? And where are the gaps? So where are people overworked? Where can we move people? Where do we have needs for different skills than we might have today? We now have good visibility of that, and it helps us in our annual planning. So prioritizing the right resources, the right projects, the right time, that whole organizational approach was key to us, and Tempus has really been a major factor in allowing us to have that visibility. I'd wrap up by asking everybody to stay safe, stay healthy. Agilent's doing everything we can right now to get us on the other side of this thing, and we hope you are too. So thank you very much.